Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of MyES TV. Now, if you've ever been my student, you know that my favorite sentence to say is, don't translate. But I don't just yell this to terrorize or joke around with my students. I'm being 100% serious. If you use Italian, or whatever else your native language is, as the template from which to start speaking English, you will never be able to learn it correctly. So here's my advice. Imagine you have two boxes in your brain, okay? The big one is filled with all of the knowledge and words of your native language, all the grammar rules, conventions, context, pronunciation, structure, etc. The other box is filled with what you know about English. When you translate, you are essentially taking things out of one box and putting it into the other. The problem here is that the boxes don't have the same holes and they're not the same size. The information doesn't fit. It is impossible to speak correctly if you use this approach. So, you must slowly start filling the second box, English, on your own. And now I will demonstrate why. Let's take an example I heard today from a student. He wanted to tell me about Dante, and this is what he said verbatim. In 1265, born Dante. Now, this is the construction in Italian, but in English, this doesn't make any sense. The first mistake to focus on here is how the sentence starts. There is one thing to remember about English. Except for questions, you must start with the subject. The subject is king. So immediately, the problem here is that Dante is the subject and it's not the beginning. So let's start our English sentence. Dante. Next, we have to use the passive. This is also the same in Italian, but in English we have to use the past passive since it's a past action. Dante was born. The final problem is how the student said the year. The correct way to read this year is 1265. So, the final version should be Dante was born in 1265. The passive presents a lot of problems for students who are used to speaking and thinking in a Romance language, since in those languages, it is common to start the sentence with the verb and then talk about the subject. But remember, in English, if you don't tell me what or who you're talking about, what or who is doing the verb, then I have no idea what's happening. As a native speaker, I go into panic mode. I have the verb, but what, who, what's the subject? Here's another example. Was built the Colosseum by the Romans. No, the Colosseum was built by the Romans. Let's look at some other reasons why it's important to never translate. The Italian verb prendere can be translated into many different English words, but it cannot always be used in the same way. I took a coffee, I took the sun, and I took an ice cream. I hear these a lot. My next question to all of these sentences is, where did you take it? Where did you take the sun and how? Because of course, take in English is completely different. And don't forget about bring. In order to learn how to use these correctly, it is essential to start from scratch, from zero, and not use translating. Another great example is with connectives. Let's take nonostante. Do you see how many different translations this word has? Albeit, notwithstanding, however, although, despite, even though, nevertheless, in spite of. And all of these are used in different ways for different contexts. So, you're going to have a hard time using them correctly if you rely too much on Italian. The same thing can be said for words that are untranslatable. The Italian word pretendere has about 4 or 5 English translations, and they are all used in different ways. Not only that, but there's nothing that really encapsulates the full meaning of the Italian word pretendere. On the flip side, we have untranslatable words from English to Italian. The verb bake, for example, doesn't really have an Italian equivalent. It's used in two ways. The first is to describe a method of cooking. The second is to distinguish between baking and cooking, since those products aren't the same. So I would normally say, I prefer cooking to baking because baking is too difficult. Ideas are expressed differently in each language, and by limiting yourself to what you already know from your native tongue, you're missing out on so much of what makes English amazing. So remember, guys, don't translate. Don't use your original language to help you with English, especially if it's Italian or French or another Romance language, because they're very different. Start from scratch, start from zero, and build up your knowledge. If you like this video, please be sure to give us a like, and in the comments tell us what your mistakes have been when translating. Thank you so much, guys. Like and subscribe for more videos.